Okay, I think we can get started. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Melbourne Women's Fund Grants Information Evening for 2021. I'm Amanda, the co-chair of the Grants Committee. And to begin, we'll begin with an acknowledgement of country. And we invite you to join us in the spirit of reconciliation. Melbourne Women's Fund sincerely acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as First Australians and the traditional custodians of country. We recognise and value their continuous connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Thank you. Now, a little bit of housekeeping, which likely with webinars we've all been used to for a while now. So the webinar is being recorded so we can make it available to view on our website. And the volume will be muted throughout for you, not for us, hopefully. And you will be able to type in any questions you may have by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen at any time. And now we'll commence, and I'll take you through a little bit of what to expect this evening. So you'll shortly meet my Grants Committee co-chair, Simone Clancy, who will provide you with an overview of this year's grants process. You will then meet members of the Grants Committee who will present information from each of the Nurturing Grant and Signature Grant finalist applications. After each presentation, there will be a few minutes for questions. And remember, you can click on the Q&A button at any time at the bottom of your screen to submit a question. After all the presentations, I'll rejoin you to run through what to expect from after tonight through to the Grant Awards celebration on the 18th of November, which is, I think I was calculating, 5 weeks away. So not far to go. And to finish, Melbourne Women's Fund Executive Officer, Christine Darkus, will join us to provide you with an overview of our Giving Circle. And now I'm pleased to invite Simone Clancy to speak about our 2021 grants round process. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Amanda. So before we introduce our 2020 finalists, as Amanda mentioned, and their projects, I'll just provide a brief overview of the grants process and our selection criteria for 2021. So our new grants year commenced with the development of a grants action plan, and this was to ensure alignment with Melbourne Women's Fund strategic goals. This really reinforced our commitment to empowering not-for-profits and applying best practice philanthropy to all our interactions, ensuring we really maintain a strong focus on the organisations that we serve. We'll continue to listen and act on the feedback that we receive from our applicants and iterate and improve on our granting processes. We really want to make it as easy as possible for eligible organisations, big or small, to be able to apply for our grants and, consequently ensure that we have also a very wide pool of applicants to choose from. We were very mindful that most organisations would need to apply resources that were already stretched by the increased demands of the pandemic to our grants application process. And with this in mind, we reintroduced the expression of interest or EOI phase to limit the number of organisations compelled to undertake the significant work to complete a full application, only to then fail to make it to the finalist stage. We also developed new collateral and updated information to assist organisations in understanding our grants process and operations. In addition, we sought to actively engage with prospective applicants by speaking with them to ensure the suitability of their organisation and project prior to then developing submissions. Our eligibility criteria were expanded this year to include programs involving young and or adult men, recognising the important role that they have to play in improving positive outcomes for women and their families. We also moved to an open rather than an invitation-only grants round for the very first time, and we actively promoted our grants through our website, social media, and our philanthropic networks. The 2020 grants round called for submissions across the 3 focus areas that you can see in the bubble there, as nominated by you, our members, in 2020, I should say. So homelessness, family violence, and employment and economic empowerment. We're really delighted by the strong response to our open grants round. and we had a 53% increase in applications across the 2 grants categories, and including submissions from organisations that weren't currently on our database. And we were also delighted to see a clear trend in very high quality submissions from strong organisations. As a result of the assessments, we shortlisted 5 organisations from a total of 14 EOIs to submit full applications for the $35,000 nurturing grant, and 8 organisations from 29 EOIs for the $75,000 signature grant. As always, a selection of 3 finalists for each grant category from such a high calibre batch of shortlisted applicants to be ratified by our auspicing body, Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, is not easy. However, we're really pleased with the quality and range of our MWF finalists for 2021. It's noteworthy that a significant number of submissions were focused on employment and economic empowerment as organisations look to redress the adverse socio-economic impacts of the pandemic on women. These also included some of the communities most impacted by the current Delta outbreak. Our shortlist consisted of excellent submissions from several organisations we were unaware of, and we really appreciate learning about them and hope to see them apply in future grants rounds. In the spirit of conducting a grants process that helps to build organisations' grant-seeking skills, all shortlisted organisations that are not selected as finalists are provided with tailored feedback on their submissions. Next slide, please. So in assessing the submissions, the Grants Committee uses a range of criteria. So the first being that direct beneficiaries must be young and or adult women or young and adult women together with their families located in Greater Melbourne. There needs to be a clear, compelling, evidence-based need for their project, and the project activity needs to directly address the need and be supported by a detailed project plan and budget. There needs to be a robust mechanism for assessing the impact of the project, and the organisation must have the necessary resources, skills, experience, financial management and governance to conduct the activity. We conduct a review of the most recent submissions to the ACNC, including audited financials, as well as conducting reference checks as part of this process. And finally, the MWF grant is important to the activity and needs to be well aligned to our granting preferences. Our members have shown a strong preference for supporting grassroots organisations or innovative pilot programs for more established organisations that would not receive government funding and are reliant on philanthropy and other forms of support. And all our finalists are subject to LMCF's governance and ratification. Next slide, please. Next slide, thanks, Kate. So now it's the exciting part. The team's going to share information with you from each finalist application and project plans. We've allowed time for questions at the conclusion of each presentation, so please feel free to pop them in the Q&A section, not the chat, where Louise will pick them up. It's my pleasure now to introduce Jo Kavanagh, who's going to share details of our first project in the Nurturing Grant category. Take it away, Jo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Simone. I'm delighted to join everyone tonight and present to you our first Nurturing Grant finalist, Juno. Their submission is for the Empower Peer Connect program, targeted to lifting single mothers with complex problems out of poverty and into community and employment. So just a few words about Juno first. Next slide, please. So Juno's purpose is empowering women to create the life they choose. They work with women and non-binary people in Melbourne's northern suburbs who are experiencing homelessness and family violence. They were formerly known as Wishin and began in the 1980s to support marginalised women. However, in 2020, they renamed as Juno, Juno being a Roman goddess connected with all aspects of the lives of women, which speaks to their intention now to, they're committed to a holistic and feminist informed approach to empowering disadvantaged women. As you can see here in their revenue, of that, about 1.5 million is government funding, and that's for their work as case managers, helping women in crisis and their children to find secure accommodation and then seeking to support them into long-term housing with access to specialist supports. They then seek philanthropic funding to enable a more holistic approach beyond what government funds to meeting the needs of women and children. In 2020, they supported over 300 women. Most have children in their care, 70% are survivors of family violence, and over 40% were born overseas. Over half are living with a diagnosed mental illness. So this data tells us they work with the most disadvantaged women with complex needs. They are an established community-based organisation that works in partnership and collaboration with other diverse organisations. Next slide, please. The specific program that they're looking for support from Melbourne Women's Fund is the Empower Peer Connect program for economic mobility and wellbeing. This is an evidence-based, extensively evaluated coaching program developed over 10 years in the US and assisting more than 200,000 people. It's now been scaled across 5 countries with 143 organisations delivering the coaching model to lift women out of poverty. Juno has commenced Empower as an innovation and a pilot adapted for Melbourne. The grant request is for 30 single mothers to experience the program and test for measurable changes in their circumstances and wellbeing. And the service is needed for them because of the reasons you can see here of the additional marginalisation, which affects single mothers and their children, and when they've experienced homelessness and family violence, or the additional barriers for them to achieve employment and social inclusion for them and their children. Next slide, please. As a holistic program, the focus of Empower is on achieving employment and life goals through skills, relationships, and mentoring supports. Specifically, the Melbourne Women Fund grant would provide the last tranche of funding they need to get to the complete 2-year program pilot. The Melbourne Women's Fund grant will be used in the 12 months of January 2022 to December 2022. The major grant support is already committed by the Lord Mayor's Charitable Fund. The grant will fund the coach and the case coordinator for the 30 young mothers with a 12-week skills-based program and optimising the use of other programs in the local areas for finances, computer skills, etc. Importantly, in the last bullet point there, each woman has a specific agreed case plan and goals which are measured to track their performance and outcomes. Next slide, please. The bulk of the program, as I mentioned, cost over 2 years has been secured, and this is the last 35,000 being sought to get Juno over the line to implement the complete program. Now, the specific measurable outcomes are really important. So women will have an increased income to be living above the poverty line. The women will increase their skills to support secure employment. Women will live in secure housing costing less than 40% of their income, and women will have strong and supportive networks. From the evidence-based program that they are importing from the US or adapting from the US, there are proven validated tools and resources to support the implementation and measurement of the program and the specific change for the individual women. And then external evaluator is already on board to support the transparency and an ethical, rigorous evaluation. So I'm really delighted to commend the program to you. Thank you. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Thanks,
about
Jo.
Juno?
That was terrific. And hi to all of our members. There's so many of us online now. It's terrific to see. I just wanted to point out to anybody that arrived a little bit late after 6 p.m. that if you would like to put in any questions, please feel free to do that in the Q&A section just at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions throughout and I can read them for you. But Jo, I do have a couple of questions if that's all right. I've got a question here. Beyond these 30 women, what is the potential for this program to be continued, or is it a once-off commitment by Juno?
Really good question. I'll do my best to answer it. My understanding is that they are developing this as an innovation with a view to then impacting on systems and policy change, that they want to demonstrate a more effective approach for as a holistic approach, not just housing and not just employment, but to bring all those pieces together and then use the results for advocacy with government to change funding. And aspiring to systems change and policy change is part of Juno's purpose. So I would see this as an innovation pilot with successful results being used to then re-implement the program and scale and expand.
Yeah, thank you. Question from Kristen that's come through. Thanks, Kristen. Will the entire program support just 30 women? Or is Melbourne Women's Fund component supporting 30 women and the remainder of the program supporting a broader group?
Well, my understanding is that there's a couple of rollouts of the program, so we're being involved in those particular 30 women for that period of time. But there will be other, which is what the rest of the funding is for, other groups and participants. So yes, there will be more benefiting from the program, but we will have a focus on one piece of the program.
Okay, thank you. Fabulous program from an anonymous attendee. What has been undertaken and or achieved in the first 2 years of the program?
Well, I don't know that I can answer that question. I think we would need to take that on notice and encourage Juno to present that on the actual night. But it's a great question and we will ask them.
Good, we'll take note of that. One last one. How are women referred to the program from Michael Hund?
Well, because they're already working with the target group, but their funding is limited to what government will fund in terms of the housing piece, then they've really actually already got the clients and already know who needs this additional service. So there will be referrals in from their other program partners, as I understand it, the other organisations that they work with. But I don't perceive that there's any problem about enrolling and recruiting the women for the program.
Right. Okay, thanks, Jo.
Well, thank you, and thank you everyone for those questions. So it's my pleasure now to introduce another member of our grants committee, Diane Carey, who will discuss the next Nurturing Grant finalist. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jo. Good evening, my name's Diane, and I'm here to talk about our second finalist for the Nurturing Grant, the River Nile Learning Centre, and their project, Preparing Refugee and Asylum Seeker Women for Employment. River Nile was first established in 2006 to support the African refugee community in Melbourne. Since then, they have grown and evolved to the changing needs of their community, and today their main focus is providing essential language, life and work skills to young refugee and asylum seeker women. Thanks. Next slide, please. In 2020, their revenue was $197,000. 100% of this is dependent on grants, donations and fundraising, and students who attend the centre do so free of charge. River Nile is primarily led by volunteers. They have a dedicated team who tutor and mentor the students and also assist with the running of the centre. Their classrooms are located in West Melbourne, where students have access to computers and internet. Next slide, thanks. So why is this program needed? The mothers and women at the centre are amongst the most disadvantaged in our community. This is due to poverty, language barriers, and an unfamiliarity with Australian culture and society. They've had little opportunity to receive an education in their home country, and in Australia too for that matter. And as you can imagine, most have lived lives that have been severely disrupted by war or trauma. Typically, they're aged between 18 and 30 and come from the Horn of Africa and the Middle East. We all know how getting your first job is difficult for any of us, but it's particularly difficult for these ladies who've had to overcome so many obstacles. So this project meets the needs of these women. They not only want to be able to support their families financially, but they also want to be active members of our community. Next slide, thanks. The program's aim is to place these women into respectful, ongoing paid employment, providing them with greater independence and integrating them as productive members of the community. You can see on the screen that the project timeline fits in with the Melbourne Women funding dates. The project begins with 10 full-day training sessions over a 5-week period for 30 students. It covers topics like workplace skills, responsibilities, communications, and there's also some practical training as well. The training is designed to help the women gain work in the service industry and in hospitality. River Nile have engaged with Service Stars. Now, if you haven't heard of them, Service Stars are an alliance that helps find jobs for multicultural communities in Victoria. So a Service Stars trainer will run the sessions and also provide individual career mentoring. And they will also broker suitable and respectful work placements for each student. Next slide, thanks. The total program cost is estimated at $235,000. Now, this is quite a large bill to pay, but a good portion is covered through material donations and in-kind support from the many partnership organisations they have. They're connected to groups like the Red Cross and the Food Bank and several other organisations they're partnered with. And they're also receiving funding from Sydney Maya Fund and the City of Melbourne. So our nurturing grant will cover all the direct costs connected to this specific project. Once the project's completed, the expected outcomes are primarily River Nile Learning Centre will have established a work readiness training course tailored to the needs of young women. And this in turn will help the River Nile Centre develop a strong reputation in the community as a training provider. The 30 students will have secured ongoing employment and they'll be on their way to gaining self-worth and independence. River Nile like to keep in contact with their students after they move on. They encourage the women to return, to share their experiences and to be role models for new students. And finally, the students pass on their newly acquired skills to their family, breaking the cycle of dependence on social welfare. The centre uses this motto that when you educate the mother, you educate the whole family. Next slide, thanks. Okay, so that's it for me, and I'm ready for any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Diane. That was really interesting. And we've got a great question here from Carmel Collins. Hi, Carmel. This is a big program for a small organisation. Have River Nile delivered a program of this size before?
Well, no, this is a new initiative, this program, and they're starting small with 30 students, but they have been operating since 2006. So they're quite established in their area and they're well known. Like I said, they've got lots of partnerships that they work with. They get referrals from refugee case managers. So within their community, they're quite well established.
Yeah, good. How do the students manage this course if they have limited English skills? The next question.
Yeah. Well, this course is a new initiative and it stems from their existing EAL, English as an additional language course that they have up and running at the moment. So River Nile support the women through learning basic English, literacy, numeracy, work-life skills that are appropriate to the Australian community or culture. And then once they're ready, this is the next step to help them develop new skills so that they can become more employable.
Good, thank you very much. Question from Christina. Hi, Christina. Are there specific careers, jobs that they help steer the students into?
It's mainly hospitality and service industry is my understanding. And they do that through the Service Stars organisation, who have their own networks. But it's in that field that this program is working towards.
Mm-hmm. Where do the students come from? How are they referred to River Nile Centre?
Well, that's through case managers, through refugee case managers. They also, through their other partnerships, the Red Cross Asylum Seekers Resource Centre, through schools refer them. So they do have lots of areas, lots of orgs that they're connected to, and they seem to be quite well established to support these refugees and asylum seeking women. I hope that answers your question.
I think so. Yeah, just one last one. The Nurturing Grant pays for the training program.
Yeah.
What other expenses are there that the other donations cover?
Yeah, so there's so much more to the needs of these women than just this training program. A lot of them don't qualify for government assistance. So a lot of the other support is practical needs, food, Mikey cards to travel. I'm not quite sure what else, but they do get a lot clothing, whatever they need to be able to get by and continue with their training and their education. So practical things. Also, they have quite a large volunteer pool, and that in itself is a kind of in-kind support, where they're getting support for the students that are guiding them and teaching them, but not the outlay of paying for their wages.
Great. Thank you very much. No more questions from me.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand it over to Kate now, who's talking about our next program. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. That was very interesting. Hello, I'm Kate. I am going to introduce our final Nurturing Grant finalist for this evening, the Social Studio. The Social Studio is a not-for-profit social enterprise that describes itself as part educator, part retailer, and part production house. They use fashion and creativity to create work and learning opportunities for Melbourne's refugee and new migrant communities. Next slide, please. The Social Studio has been in Collingwood since 2009, and in 2020, its revenue was 0.75 million, of which 29,000 was a surplus from their social enterprise activities. As you'll see from these figures, a large proportion of their funding is from private donations, and they have a number of full-time and part-time staff supplemented with volunteers. Next slide, please. This particular program has been identified as a way to work with women who would like to participate in the program. It's a really beneficial program. It's broad and goes quite far into a lot of life skills, which are very much needed for the people who are referred by the caseworkers and who come from a number of backgrounds that cause significant challenges in integrating into life here in Melbourne. What the Social Studio aims to do is respond to these barriers by really taking into account the diverse needs of the participants. And this particular program is designed to provide pathways to employment for 10 women over the next coming months. Next slide, please. As you'll see, the main objectives of this program include delivering training towards the Certificate 3 in clothing and textile production, which is a nationally recognised qualification accredited by RMIT, but it's a lot more than that. Alongside this particular certification, there are many additional skills and learnings to be found: improving English, life skills, financial literacy, empowerment training, and general community building, helping with social connections for the participants, and also importantly, helping them figure out what they want to do and providing a number of them with placements so that enhances their chances of gaining work in this fashion industry, which is where the Certificate 3 in clothing and textile production equips them to work. Next slide, please. As you'll see, the $35,000 nurturing grant is nearly half of the total program cost for the 10 participants, and it goes towards a number of essential parts of the program: materials, the salaries of the program coordinator, the student pathways coordinator. The other funding comes partly from the social studio itself, $18,000, partly from fundraising that they will be doing, $15,000, and partly from the Inner North Foundation, $7,500. We need to stress that the social studio does need additional funding to bridge the gap between what its social enterprise brings in and the cost of actually working with more of these young people. And this is really important to give a helping hand to the education and social support for the young women participants, which is provided free of charge. Now, I'm sure you may have some questions for me, so I think the last slide is the next one. Please ask away.
Great, thank you so much, Kate. I do have one here from an attendee. What employment opportunities are there for participants who finish the program?
There are, as I say, some of the placements that the participants have been working in during the program may offer them jobs. Some previous participants have gone on to found their own enterprises, sometimes social enterprises, and there are also employment opportunities within the social studio itself. So the broad fashion industry, the textile industry is the source of the employment opportunities.
Thank you. And from Sue Home, a good question. How is the fashion they create sold?
Well, there is a shop front in Collingwood if they are selling it via the social studio. And if they set up their own fashion business, then it will be through that.
Good. And lastly, do participants contribute to the cost of the training?
No, it's provided entirely free of charge to the participants. And this is really important given that many of them come from refugee and migrant backgrounds, maybe quite recently arrived, maybe facing multiple barriers to participating in the workforce and in further education, and are unlikely to have surplus funds to pay for this training themselves.
Good. I think that might be all of the questions, unless anyone had anything else, just pop it in the Q&A. I don't think there's anything else coming through. So thank you very much, Kate. That was terrific.
Thanks, Louise. I'd now like to hand over to Simone, who has your first signature grant finalist. Over to you, Simone.
Thanks very much, Kate. And it's my pleasure to introduce Banksia Gardens GPAN's School Hubs program. Established in 1981, Banksia Gardens Community Services is a vibrant neighbourhood house and community service organisation located in the heart of Broadmeadows. They have a strong commitment to community development and action research principles, and while their programs focus mainly on early childhood education and training, young people, environmental sustainability and community participation and advocacy. Their 2020 revenue was just under $4 million, with 75% of their funding coming from government and largely tied to the provision of core services, including programs targeting high risk and recidivist vulnerable young people, and EAL literacy and numeracy and job readiness training programs. It also supports the operation of the Neighbourhood House, which is currently a COVID test and vaccination hub and has been providing food and material aid to several hundred people a week affected by the pandemic. Banksia has 7 full-time equivalent staff, 50 part-time and casual employees, and is supported by a similar number of volunteers. Next slide, please. So Hume has the highest rates of family violence incidences per 10,000 residents, the highest rates of other sexual assaults, and some of the highest rates of disadvantage in metropolitan Melbourne. The Good People Act Now, or GPAN, School Hubs project aims to stop this violence before it starts by educating school students and their communities. GPAN is underpinned by the principle that family violence and violence against women is serious, prevalent, and driven by gender inequality. The GPAN model has been tested and received recognition by a Fiona Richardson Award for its work in promoting gender equality in 2019. This program aims to start the conversation earlier, providing training and support to empower local young women and men to challenge sexism and gender-based violence. In Banksia's experience, and based on the feedback from GPAN participants, far from being deterred by difficult conversations, there are a number of very capable, resilient and articulate young people that are keen to be informed and be advocates for change in their school communities and in their wider communities from a younger age. And next slide, please. So the GPAN School Hubs program will run from February to September next year, targeting 10 to 15 students at each of the 4 local schools with which Banksia has developed partnerships, so from 40 to 60 young people. The program will run 6 45-minute workshops across 6 weeks with topics including introduction to family violence, violence against women and gender inequality, respectful relationships, being an active bystander, how to influence peers, and dealing with backlash. An important feature of the program is the student-led engagement activities to raise awareness and create positive change as part of the whole of school approach, and also gender equality audits. The GPAN School project lead and facilitators, supported by the school's wellbeing teams, will conduct 5 meetings to guide the students in planning and delivery of these ambassador-led activities. And through these activities, they aim to connect with over 1,000 students and adults in the year. So ongoing evaluation, assessment and reporting is a very strong feature of the program. Next slide, please. So the Melbourne Women's Fund Signature Grant will cover the cost of the part-time GPAN School Hub officer and 2 casual GPAN School Hub facilitators, and will partially fund occupancy, admin and IT expenses for the program. The balance of the project budget is secured in-kind contributions from Banksia Gardens and the schools involved. As a result of the program, the GPAN School Hub aims to have educated at least 40 ambassadors who are confident in their knowledge of family violence and the relationship between gender equality and the prevention of violence against women. They will have provided increased support for gender equality and prevention of violence against women within the wider school community through the ambassador-led activities supported by the schools. And finally, the goal is that the GPAN School Hub ambassadors will be empowered advocates for gender equality and prevention of violence against women in their communities beyond their involvement in this project and in the years to come. And they are ultimately looking to see a measurable decrease in rates of violence against women as reflected in the Victorian Women's Health Atlas. Thank you, and I'd love to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Simone. That was excellent. So the first question for you, how will the program be sustained beyond next year?
So I think GPAN, they're always going to continue to look for long and short-term funding opportunities, but they ultimately plan to shift for a fee for service model. So where the schools and or the Department of Education and Training will fund the program once they've been able to prove its success through running it with our support.
Great, thank you. I've just started looking down here. We've got one from Di Jaquel. Why is it 10 to 15 students per school only? How are the students chosen?
That's a good question, actually. I think that is the minimum, though. I'm sure they would engage more if they could. But yeah, I'd certainly, Di, if you're able to attend the site visit, I think I'd certainly ask that you pose that question to the GPAN coordinators, and yeah, we'll take that on notice as well for them as well. And I think, yeah, it's very much a partnership between the GPAN team and the school, so that they'll be working with the school's wellbeing coordinators, I think, to engage and identify people that have an interest and would be keen to become ambassadors in this program.
Good, good. Terry, thank you. How does the program differ from respectful relationship curriculum already in place?
I think they've certainly leveraged that and have further developed on that. And I think ultimately they would hope for some of this program, the learnings from it. And as I mentioned, there's a really strong evaluation component as part of this, that would then hopefully find its way back into that curriculum. So it's sort of piloting this new approach based on their experience of GPAN, which, as I mentioned, was an established program with older groups of young people. So taking that to the schools, reworking it, getting the feedback for young people, and then hopefully that then becomes part of the respectful relationships program in schools.
Good. Gillian, hi Gillian. How will they measure the success of the program?
I think it's, as I mentioned, they take audits in terms of people's views on gender equality at the start, at actually multiple stages through the program, through surveys, and then also through targeted focus groups. But then, yeah, they're actually looking at the Women's Health Atlas, and they actually want to see a measurable decrease of rates of violence against women. So that they're actually looking at that as a measurement, a key measurement criteria as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Simone. Another question from Nicole. What age group are being selected to represent this issue within their community, and has there been any success indicators to date?
Yeah, that's a good question on the success indicators. I can't answer that one for you, and it's basically secondary school students, so ages 15 to 18, whereas I think the current GPAN cohort, it's 18 to early 20s. I'd have to double check that. But yeah, as I said, it's really based on the feedback from those GPAN participants. They've sort of indicated to the GPAN team that, gee, we really, we wish we'd known some of this information earlier. That they basically see a need to educate younger people and bring it into school communities.
Right. I think that might be all the questions. But yeah, keep them coming, everyone. They're terrific questions. And thanks very much, Simone. That was a great presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you. And I think we have, Sarah Davies is going to discuss our next Signature Grant finalist.
Thank you very much, Simone. I'm Sarah Davies, a member of the Grants Committee, and my pleasure to introduce Fitted for Work. First slide, please. Fitted for Work is a wonderful organisation founded in 2005. Since then, it has supported 38,000 disadvantaged women to find work, training, and build their confidence and resilience, improving their lives. Their program tonight is the Women's Economic Empowerment Program. It's run by their She Works social enterprise. And it's very much an inclusion and empowerment of women at its core, supporting women affected by disadvantage, living with a disability, living with domestic violence, exiting a correctional facility, many other complex barriers that women face. Fitted for Work is very good in its evaluation. It surveys its clients continuously. 30% of the women identify as single parents. 66% of women are from a CALD background, and 72% of women have had their education has not been beyond secondary school. And even more interestingly, 23% of women come from rural and regional locations. The program is Fitted for Work on its funding, receives minimal government funding, as you can see there, only 3%. They have to continuously raise philanthropic funding from trusts and foundations and generous donors, and they do that year on year. They have 2 locations in Richmond and also Parramatta in Sydney. They have a very dedicated number of volunteers, and that has been a great strength. Those volunteers assist in all aspects of Fitted for Work's work and as mentors to many of the women. So this program, next slide please. The Women's Economic Empowerment Program will assist women aged 16 to 65 years, a really broad range, but most importantly, it is their pre-employment and post-employment support. They want to build a pipeline of 300 women that can be assisted through their Emerge program, which is enabling an online program, support program developed during COVID, enabling women to connect with a community of other women, with their mentors, and build their confidence and support structures. This program will enable women to find work through She Works corporate partners, which are in IT, retail, admin, transport and construction. Fitted for Work has built these partnerships with wonderful corporates who share Fitted for Work's aspirations for their clients. They also partner with a wonderful training organisation, Octec Limited, which is national, and they have many transition to work programs and some very strong focus on supporting single parents and women with a disability or of an older age group getting back into the workforce. Next slide, please. The program, the support program run by Fitted for Work really is very individualised. It's helping women identify their strengths. It's very strength-based, to find where things they may have been unable to achieve so far in their life, but most importantly, how they can get into their first job, build their resume, have strong interview skills so that they can start to build their financial independence. And most importantly, the objective of the program is for them to be able to keep their roles. And this is where the post-employment mentoring support is a key aspect of Fitted for Work's focus. So the women feel that they're supported both pre-employment and post-employment. The program will run throughout 2022 alongside the funding from Melbourne Women's Fund. Next slide, please. The program cost is based on training volunteers, and these are the mentors to create strong matches for the clients, and also the IT requirements for running Fitted for Work's Emerge online support program, and their marketing, SheWorks, and the operational overhead and staff support that comes through running SheWorks, along with the evaluation for each of the clients. For the women, it's building their confidence, their self-esteem, their resilience and social connections. And for many of the majority of these women, they've not been able to access any of those support through any other organisation. And Fitted for Work is somewhere they feel that they are heard, that they are able to be fully supported. And the wonderful result is that to date, 90% of placed SheWorks candidates are still in their roles for greater than 6 months, which is a massive achievement for many women who've not been able to be in long-term employment prior to coming to Fitted for Work. So I recommend this program very strongly and passionately to all members of the wonderful Melbourne Women's Fund. Next slide, please. Very happy to take any questions.
That's good, because we've got a few. Thank you. The first one is from Helen, actually. In terms of evaluation of GPAN, how long and how many times after delivery will they capture the changes they are expecting to happen and see showing up in Women's Health Atlas?
Louise, I think that's a question for me,
that's
which I'll
GPAN.
take on
Oh,
notice.
it is.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I'll go to the next one, I think. How does Fitted for Work select the 300 women?
Very good question. The women are taken through a program, and so they have to be work ready. So it is the support program for getting all the clients moving through a very concerted program that Fitted for Work sets out, establishing where their confidence levels are, where their skill sets are, where their what other supports they need wrapped around them, so that they're able to be put into an interview situation and then placed in employment.
Good, thank you. How long does Fitted for Work continue to support clients after they get a job?
That's a very good question. Fitted for Work will support women for as long as they need it. And the great joy is that many women come to them after they've received the support and they've been in employment for probably 6 months or more, saying that they feel strong enough now to not be relying on Fitted for Work, and that they have been able to build other support connections for themselves. So that is something to be encouraged, and certainly something to be very greatly celebrated for each of the clients.
Yeah, thank you. And from Terry, how many women are presenting to Fitted for Work each year?
Well over 300 clients. There are thousands of women who are searching for support in navigating the ever increasingly challenging field of work. There's never been really a more important time for women searching for employment than now, after so many have lost their jobs, many of them in low paid casual work, hospitality, etc., throughout 2020, and affected by the enormous challenges that COVID has placed on everyone.
Yeah, understandably. And Nicole has said, love this business. Is this a new program for Fitted for Work or a continuation of their core activity?
This is an existing program, but it has been further developed. It's constantly being developed in response to the needs of the clients of Fitted for Work. So in 2020, they developed their Emerge program, which is the online support, so that women who are not able to come into their premises, Fitted for Work's premises, could remain connect with their mentors and also feel supported by Fitted for Work.
Good, thank you. Have we lost our slides? No? I've got a couple of other questions, Sarah. Shall I just keep going? This is from an anonymous one. Does the organisation call on the experience of past women who have engaged in the program to act as role models and mentors for the new women?
It most certainly does. It has a very strong feeder network, and it's part of the culture of Fitted for Work that hear stories. So they have, if you go onto their website, they have quite a lot of testimonials, but they also, many of the women choose to give back to Fitted for Work and tell their stories proudly of how Fitted for Work has made a difference to their life.
Great. Are you up? I'll take one last question. Do any of the women who pass through the program return as ambassadors or mentors? Along
Yes.
the same lines, yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's from
many of the mentors have been past participants in Fitted for Work's programs.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a fantastic presentation. Can everyone still see the slides?
No.
Here we go. I'll just share those. Great. All right. So thank you. I think we'll end the questions there.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can. Thanks, Fiona.
Excellent. My name is Fiona Reid, and I'm very pleased to present the application for Free to Feed. Free to Feed has been in operation now for 5 years. It was started in 2017 to work with asylum seekers and refugees and help them develop skills to enter the workforce, and in this way to overcome barriers to social and economic inclusion. This program is one of a number of programs that Free to Feed run. Free to Feed is a social enterprise which actually makes money by offering catering services and cooking classes. Next slide, please. It actually receives no government funding. Typically, its income is 70% generated by its own social enterprise endeavours and 30% from donations. In 2020, its revenue was negatively impacted by COVID on account of it not being able to deliver its full suite of services. And importantly, these services are provided by the refugees and asylum seekers it works with. It's based in Melbourne's inner north and works with people who come mostly from Middle Eastern and African backgrounds. The participants will have complex physical and mental health needs. They'll have housing insecurity, low employment rates, and financial insecurity. And they will largely be women on the higher end of the risk spectrum. Next slide. This particular program is called Commercial Cooking Training and Employment for Refugee Women. The beneficiaries will be a cohort of 18 women who will be selected on the basis of their potential to undertake and complete the course. While they will have experienced acute hardship, stress, anxiety, social dislocation, and very limited, if any, government support, they will be passionate about cooking and about delivering a service to the community. They will be paid for their work and will be preparing, as a consequence of this, to join the broader workforce. In this way, they will be building their financial and health security. Next slide. The program runs for just over 12 months. The first step will be to recruit the required staff. Then the participants will be selected and undertake baseline assessment, including a psychological assessment. The participants' cooking skills and well-being will be monitored regularly throughout the year. The program is based on best practice, research and lived experience, drawing in particular on the insights from the participants. It's also guided by trauma-informed practice, as well as the theories of acculturation, psychosocial rehabilitation and empowerment. The commercial cooking training is provided under the guidance of Box Hill TAFE at the Free to Feed commercial kitchen by Free to Feed chefs. And the reason for this is because this is a psychologically and physically safe environment for these participants. The program also includes peer and social support and free access to a range of health support workers, including psychologists, doctors, dentists, social workers, and translators. Next slide. The outcomes of this program are really tangible. The participants receive a Certificate 3 in commercial cooking from Box Hill TAFE. They receive a minimum of 2 shifts per week of employment in the Free to Feed commercial kitchen, and on average, they earn $1,326 per month. They also have the opportunity to teach by way of using their participant group, and typically they're teaching their own special recipes or techniques that come from their cultural background. They get to co-create a cohort cookbook. And then finally, they receive transition support to the broader workforce in general, where 90% are employed within 6 weeks of graduating. This service is provided in partnership by the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence's Job Support Service. And importantly, through the measurement process, the participants register up to 20% increase in wellbeing. The program costs just under $220,000 to run, and the funding is made up of support from other organisations over and above the Melbourne Women's Fund. They include the Bennelong Foundation, the Inner North Community Foundation, and our contribution from the Free to Feed organisation itself. In the past, Free to Feed has also received funding from the Scanlon Foundation, whose executive officer spoke highly of Free to Feed, and she commended it to us for our support. Next slide. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Fiona. I have a question from Carmel Collins. Do the expected outcomes match the experience of previous years?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what those expectations are based on, prior experience.
Mm-hmm. And how will the program make up the gap in its funding?
Well, as I said, it's actually got the funding to run this program from the Inner North Community Foundation, from the Bennelong Foundation. It's making a contribution itself from its own earnings, and the $75,000 from the Melbourne Women's Fund will be the final gap filler.
Okay. And how will Free to Feed measure the success of the program?
That's a great question. So they're very committed to measurement, and as I mentioned, there are ongoing monitoring activities that occur. In addition to the focus on health, which is monitored continuously through the program, there are surveys undertaken regularly of the participants. There are 6 monthly focus groups that are run in the native languages of the participants. And they also do demographic analysis to determine whether they're matching the demographics of the communities in which they work. And finally, they do regular board reporting on the actual activities in the program.
Thank you. Just a couple more. I think we've got time. So Sue Westwood, thank you. Do participants receive a recognised or transferable qualification?
Absolutely. So the Certificate 3 from Box Hill TAFE is a bona fide TAFE certification.
And Kate Brooks, how does the free to feed normally generate funds? What's the future of this program?
So they are a social enterprise, and if you do have the opportunity to look on the website, I'd really encourage it. It's an absolutely compelling website with fabulous pictures of the participants presenting the food that they make. So under non-COVID scenarios, the catering service will actually deliver catering in-house, so you can arrange to have your event at their location, or they will come and cater at your location. During COVID, they've been incredibly innovative, and they do a food service, so you can order from the menu online, and that food, those packaged really enticing looking packages will be delivered to you within the metropolitan area of Melbourne. So they are a bona fide social enterprise which genuinely makes money from producing food related services.
Good. Thank you. I think there's a couple of comments in the chat there about how wonderful the catering is, but thanks very much, Fiona. That was terrific. And we can probably hand over to Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise, and thanks, Fiona. And thanks to everyone on the Grants Committee who presented tonight. There's a bit of difficult decision making ahead, I think. You know, the 6 finalists are all seeking to make a difference in very challenging circumstances. And it's really inspiring to know that we're all here tonight because we can help. So next, we'll take a look at what's planned between now and the Grant Awards celebration and introduce this year's voting process. So we could go to the next slide, please. So the first thing we'll run through is your virtual site visits this year. And they'll be virtual webinars. So the webinars will provide you with an opportunity to meet your finalists, hear a bit about their organisations and chat with them about their work and their activity presented to you tonight. You'll receive an invitation to each virtual site visit webinar by email, and we hope you'll be able to attend. Watch out for your invitations in your inbox. And also we'll make an announcement on MWF social media. So we don't want anyone to miss out on knowing when they're on. If you can come, it would be terrific. And we can go to the next slide, which is about the finalist training. So a key aim of our grant making program is to do what we can to build the capacity of organisations to successfully seek further funding. Feedback from previous finalists has taught us that the one-to-one presentation training we provide each year holds real value for them. So we really want to continue it for everybody in every year. This year, training will be virtual again. And as always, generously provided by an MWF member with expertise. The training also helps to provide MWF members with the information needed to make confident and informed decisions. And your voting decisions aren't easy. And so our training of the finalists really helps them to focus on and speak about what's important for you, for helping you to make your decisions. And the next thing we're going to move to is the Grant Awards celebration on the next slide. And you can see the date there. It's the 18th, Thursday, the 18th of November, what did I say before, is 4 or 5 weeks away. And this year will be an in-conversation style event with representatives of each finalist organisation. We're very much hoping that the finalists will be able to join us in a studio type setting, and we'll be live streaming in a webinar format to attendees, and you will be able to put your questions to the finalists, as similar to what you've been doing tonight with our grants committee members, but we hope to make it a very interactive experience for you so you can learn what you need to know. So all I can say about that is save the date, put it in your diary, and we really hope to see you there. And then I was speaking about voting, so we're going to move to the next slide, which is about making your vote count. It's really, really important for members to vote. That's why any members who are financial members between July 2020 and June 2021 are eligible to vote. So voting will open a week before the Grant Awards celebration and close shortly after the final voting opportunity on the night, which takes place after all the finals conversations are completed and all attendee questions are answered. So if you're a paid member, you'll receive an exclusive online voting link the week before the Grant Awards celebration. And so all the best with your decision making ahead is all I can say. I don't think it's very easy at all, which it never is year after year. And so we really appreciate all the organisations that put forward applications to us. And you're a popular girl, Christine, is that you?
Yeah, gosh. Really
oh, that's interesting.
Really awful timing.
That's okay. It's an interesting segue because I was about to say that I'll shortly hand over to you Christine Darkus, who is the Executive Officer of Melbourne Women's Fund, who was going to provide us an overview of our giving circle. But I'll give you a little bit of an intro into Christine if you don't know Christine. Christine's a founding member of MWF, and she's a previous full-term co-chair of the Grants Committee. And Christine's been leading the development and operations of our Giving Circle as Executive Officer since January 2020. Seems like a lot longer than that, doesn't it? So all I can say is January 2020, what a time to take on this role. Little did Christine, like any of us, have a tried and tested roadmap to follow for negotiating the changes in our lives that were about to come. And they're still continuing to challenge us. So on behalf of the Grants Committee, it's a grants night, and so I think it's appropriate for me to say our sincere thanks for all your support for our grants work, Christine. It means a lot.
Wow.
It really does. And over to you now. Thank you.
I didn't see that that introduction coming. I'm sincerely touched. Hi, everyone. I want to start off by thanking the members of the Grants Committee who presented this evening. These women have put in hours and hours conducting our grants process and preparing for this event. Time they have volunteered while balancing the many other demands in their lives and confronting their own challenges posed by COVID-19. So in the privacy of your lounge rooms, kitchen tables, wherever you are, I hope you're giving a round of applause to our committee co-chairs, Amanda Thornton and Simone Clancy, Joe Kavanaugh, OAM, Diane Carey, Kate Eddy, Sarah Davis, and Fiona Reed. I'd also like to thank our events chair, Louise Potter, and our marketing chair, Kate Harvey, both of whom were instrumental behind the scenes in bringing this event to fruition. For those of you who are our 2021 financial year members, I hope this evening provided you with useful background as you prepare to vote at our 7th annual Grant Award celebration on Thursday, November 18th. For all the rest of you, I hope you found this evening useful in considering your own giving. And for all of you, I hope you found it inspiring. It certainly exemplifies the passion, spirit, and rigor we bring to achieving our mission. If you're unfamiliar with us, and we do have lots of guests tonight, we are a giving circle and a charitable fund account of the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation. Our membership is open to anyone 18 years old and over. To become a member, the annual donation is a tax-deductible $1,000 plus an administration fee. However, if you're between 18 and 30 years old, you can join as a Next Gen member with an annual tax deductible donation of $500 plus an administration fee. Through Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, we pool all membership donations made in a financial year and distribute them as grants to nonprofit organizations assisting vulnerable women and families in Melbourne. As you've seen here, our grants committee determines our annual choice of 6 finalist organizations after a rigorous assessment process with added oversight by Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation. We award these grants at our annual Grants Award celebration following the financial year's end. Members in that financial year each have a vote for which organizations receive that funding. This democratizing of philanthropy is a core feature of our Giving Circle model. And the more members we have, the greater difference we can make, not just financially, but by leveraging our personal and professional resources to assist vulnerable women and families in our community. That said, you don't have to be a member to donate to our grants pool. We accept donations of any amount from individuals or organizations. However, only our members can vote on those funds distribution. This year, that grants pool is $130,000. Based on our members voting, $75,000 will go to one of our 3 signature grant finalists, and $35,000 will go to one of our 3 nurturing grant finalists. Each of the 4 runners-up will receive $5,000, the most we've ever donated to our runners-up. We were very determined to provide this extra funding in recognition of the exceptional challenges nonprofits have faced with the pandemic. Adding this funding to the number you see on this slide will bring us to $837,000 donated to 42 organizations since our 2014 beginning. So if you haven't already, save that November 18th date for the highlight of our year, the culmination of our work, which will be our 7th annual Grant Award celebration. To learn more about us, hop on our socials, our website, where you can also subscribe to our email news updates, or reach out to us at info@melbournewomen'sfund.org. As always, heartfelt thanks to our members. You are the core of who we are, and we wouldn't be able to do our work without you. Great to see you all here tonight. Thanks again for tuning in. Stay well, stay hopeful. Good night.